Thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring today's video. More about them later. So, what is the hardest Mario level of all time? Well, that's what we're going to go ahead and try to decide today. I've gone through all of the mainline Mario titles, and we're going to be going through on this tier list and trying to figure out which one is the hardest. So S tier being the hardest, D tier still being hard, but not as difficult as some of the other stages. So, yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. I actually, you know, it's funny, I actually did a top 10 hardest Mario levels like 6 or 7 years ago. And I think the reason for making this is because there was a few things that I left out, and of course Mario Bros. Wonder didn't exist at the time of making that. So now we have all these new Mario levels that are really difficult to kind of talk about. So we're just going to go ahead and start with World C3 from Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. Now, the footage on screen is from Super Mario All-Stars, but of course, it is more difficult if you're playing the original NES version. Now, this level in particular doesn't seem like it's anything that extraordinary at first. It's like, oh, okay, this is just a typical level in the game, but no, this level sucks. This level is goddamn brutal because it's barely a level to begin with. Like, the only way to really navigate is to use the springs. So not only do you have to use the springs to get across massive jumps, but you also have to worry about Koopas flying through the air, you got Lekkatus throwing Spinies at you, and there's wind. And the wind in this game is extremely egregious. It's really, really annoying to put up with. And, yeah, this level just sucks. And I think it could be argued that maybe there are a couple other harder levels in this game, but I do think most people agree that C3 is the hardest in the Lost Levels, and I have to agree too, because even after you get through all the springs, you still have to do a bunch of, couple of, like, difficult jumps across some, like, really small platforms with fire bars spinning, so the level is just giving you absolutely no bones. You have to avoid all the bones. So I'm trying to decide if this is like an A tier or an S tier. And that's because, like, obviously this level is insanely difficult, but it's also just one level. It's not a segment of a bunch of levels, which we'll be getting into in a little bit. But yeah, you know, I think just for the fact that it is just one level, we're going to throw this in A tier. It'll probably end up being a high A tier, but I think that's totally fine for this. So now let's go ahead and move on to what I think a lot of people don't really think about when it comes to the hardest Mario levels ever, and that is Super Mario Land 2, Wario's Castle. This is one of the more forgettable Mario games. It's one of the most underrated ones if you've never played it. Would highly recommend checking it out. Like, Mario Land 1 is fun, but Mario Land 2 is actually really good. And the final level, it kind of just cranks the difficulty up out of nowhere. Like, you don't really see it coming at all. And what makes the level really annoying is if you lose all your lives, basically all the coins that you collected for beating the bosses will disappear. So if you don't build up a bunch of extra lives ahead of time and you end up losing them all, you have to replay the bosses just to get a shot at this final stage again. I think this alone makes this one of the most obnoxious Mario levels of all time. Just the fact that can happen, you can lose access to the level because you die too many times, because you got a game over. I think that is just ridiculous. And then you get into the level itself, and it's actually really hard. Like, you're basically just going through this castle. You got a lot of spikes to avoid. There's these, like, piranha plant statues spewing fire at you, and the jumps are pretty tight. And while granted, you do have the carrot power-up, which is extremely helpful if you know how to use it well, it's still really difficult. And on the next screen, you have, like, these platforms that move on, or that, I'm sorry, they move once you step onto them, and they're very, very tiny. You have to do a lot of, like, precise ducking and whatnot. That can be a bit of a headache to get through, and there's just a bunch of rooms with really unforgiving obstacles that you have to avoid. And then on top of that, there's, like, these weird, like, orange Wario head things that could be a little hard to kill if you aren't careful. And, yeah, then you finish it by fighting Wario, which is very different. And I think the Wario fight is really only hard if you don't have the carrot power-up, because with the carrot power-up, you can kind of just, like, get yourself into the air and hit Wario a bunch of times over. It's really not that bad, but without any power-ups, Wario can be pretty tough. And it's actually a pretty cool fight. It really reminds me a lot of the final boss from Mario 3D World, where Bowser uses the power-ups from the game to attack you, because that's basically what Wario does. He gets access to the carrot, and he starts flying around and he gets access to the fireball. I just think that's really cool. I honestly kind of wish that more games would do this, or at least more Mario games would do this, because I think it's not done very often. It would be nice to kind of see the power-ups that you've been using throughout the entire game get thrown back at you at the very end. But with all that said, where does this rank? I think just because you're forced to build up extra lives, and if you don't have power-ups, this level is absolutely brutal. This almost might be an S tier, but I think I'm gonna keep it at high A. Let's actually put it above C3. And that's really saying something, because like the controls are pretty good in Mario Land 2. It's just the actual level itself is just really, really hard. Whereas with Lost Levels, like the level is hard too, but a lot of it just has to do with the fact that the controls are a little bit more janky. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead and just go with that for Wario's Castle. Let's move on to Tubular. Now, again, you probably could argue that there are a few more levels in Mario World that are harder. For me, I've always found this one to be the most brutal, and that's because you have to use the Balloon Mario power-up to kind of navigate your way around the stage. And not only that, but you have to keep hitting question mark blocks so that you retain the power-up, as you literally need that to clear the stage. And that can be really difficult when you got a bunch of plants spewing fire at you, and there's just like a lot of Koopas that are flying around. You got Charging Chucks throwing baseballs and footballs at you. Like, there's like a million things to avoid. And Balloon Mario isn't that easy to control. Like, with some practice, it's not that hard, but just the fact that there are so many obstacles makes this a pretty brutal level, especially if you're not really used to it. But at the end of the day, it is still just one stage, so I think it probably belongs in low A or maybe a high B tier. Because again, once you get used to controlling Balloon Mario, the level's not that bad. So I think we'll just go ahead and throw it in B tier for now. It is still difficult, but not the hardest level ever. Not by a long shot. So here's one that I was kind of debating on adding, and that is Rainbow Ride just in general in Super Mario 64. Now, obviously, I don't really need to say this. You already know I've played this game a gajillion times. I don't really find this stage all that difficult, but I do know to the average person, Rainbow Ride is just one of those levels that no one actually wants to play. Like, it's ugly to look at. It's really unforgiving. But I honestly think the main issue with the stage isn't even the fact that, like, it's super hard per se. It's more that it's really, really boring. Like, there's so many stars where you're just standing on a carpet waiting to get to the star. And yeah, you have obstacles to avoid. Like, for star 1, you have to avoid flames and stuff while you're standing on the carpet, and you have to jump over like other platforms so you don't slide off the carpet. But for the most part, like, it's hard because of how boring it can be. Just so many of the stars are just tedious. And not all of them are tedious. A couple of them are fun to do. And then, of course, like the 100 coins, I would say, is probably the hardest star in the game, just because it sucks getting to like 80 to 90 coins, and you have to like travel really far just to get coins, which makes it more likely for you to fall off and die. But does that really make it that hard of a level? I don't know. I think this might end up being one of our easiest hard Mario stages, just because, again, I think the challenge more is just fighting the tedium, and I think for that reason, we're going to throw this into C tier for now. Okay, so now let's move on to the Pachinko game. Oh my god, this level sucks ass. I think we all know this. Like, this level is just not fun. It's actually a really cool idea, throwing Mario into a pinball machine, and you have to like go through specific slots to get all the red coins. I think it's a really fun idea, and it's something we don't really see that often. Like, of course, there's Waluigi Pinball in like Mario Kart, but you don't really see this concept in like 3D Mario games, or really just platformers in general. So it's a fun idea, but just the controls just suck. I don't even know what happened. I don't know why the controls are so broken, but if you played the level, you already know what the hell I'm talking about. The controls just break. You'll try to move left or right, and maybe Mario will go the direction you're turning. Maybe he won't. You really have no idea. It's just super, super unforgiving. just because the controls suck a lot. And the thing is, again, like, it is only one level. Like, all of these so far outside of Mario 64 are just one stage. But this is one of those stages where you can be stuck here for, like, 30 minutes to an hour just because the controls are not cooperating. And I think for that reason alone, this is an S tier. I don't think it's not going to be anywhere close to, like, top of the top in terms of hardest Mario stages, but, like, I think it's going to remain an S tier. Maybe I'll bump it down to, like, high A. Speaking of challenges, I've always found it a challenge to keep track of my subscriptions and have kept some for way longer than I should have. That's where today's sponsor, Rocket Money, comes in to help. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. I love using Rocket Money to cancel unwanted subscriptions. Once you connect to your bank, Rocket Money finds all your subscriptions and puts them in a list. From there, you simply select the ones you don't want anymore, and Rocket Money may be able to help you cancel them with just a few taps. It's a really great way to save money. In fact, it's helped customers save up to $740 a year when you use all the app's premium features. They've helped save customers over $880 million in canceled subscriptions. So what are you waiting for? Take control of your finances today. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get started. You can try Rocket Money or unlock more features with premium with my link, rocketmoney.com/Bandy. Thanks to them for sponsoring this video, but now let's get back to it. Just because the controls are so bad, they're just so freaking obnoxious. Okay, now let's move on to Lily Pad Ride. And fun fact, this is the only game in this entire video that has 2 levels that made it onto this tier list. So congratulations, Mario Sunshine. Now, the lily pad ride. The level itself sucks a lot. Like, you're just on a lily pad, and you have to use the flood to kind of like try to navigate your way around and get red coins. And if you miss a red coin, it's very difficult to, basically impossible to retrieve it again. Like, yes, you can stand on the sides of the level and try to retrieve missed red coins, but for the most part, if you miss it, you're just done, and you can't swim in the water. It's just poisonous for whatever reason, I guess. I don't even know. That is kind of weird, isn't it? Like, this is a water-themed Mario game, yet this one area, the water just kills you. It's a little strange. But I actually think what kind of sucks more is just getting to Lily Pad Ride, because you need to use Yoshi, you have to eat a bunch of different fruit, you have to wait around on these boats, and it takes like 5 minutes or something of just standing around on boats, and it's incredibly slow and mind-numbing. It's just very, very boring. So yeah, I think, God, I actually don't really know where I'm gonna put this. I think this is an A tier, just for getting to the level itself and then the actual level, because, like, I think both things need to be included within the process here. I don't know. I want to put it maybe here? I don't know. This is kind of a hard one. Like, all of these, I feel like, are kind of equal in difficulty for the most part. I would probably say with Lily Pad Ride, at least you have a little bit more of a semblance of control, because you have the flood pack, and you can technically get some of the red coins if you miss them, if you are really good with the flood pack, and you have, like, a decent amount of experience with the game. So I think for that reason, I'm going to put it a little bit lower, because if you do make mistakes, you can attempt to, like, kind of redeem them, I guess. So, yeah, I guess we'll probably throw that. We'll throw that right there. I think that spot's pretty fine. Let's see what we got next. All right, this is one that I think everyone thinks of when you think of the hardest Mario levels ever. It is, of course, the perfect run. It's the very last star you do in Super Mario Galaxy 2. And the goal here is to get through the entire stage without dying even one time. Or not dying, without getting hit even once. And this is one of those stages that I have played so many times that I don't usually struggle with it. For the most part, you know, I might die a couple of times. But I think really the hard part is just the nerves. Like, a lot of these sections, like the flower one with Yoshi, or even like the flip switches as an example, you know, a lot of these sections are difficult, but they're not really going to put you to the test. The test is the fact that you only have one life. And not only that, but there are no checkpoints. So if you get hit at any point in time, you have to redo the entire thing. And that just sucks. You know, no one wants to replay all of that again just to beat the level. But I think that is what really makes it difficult. Just the fact that just the nerves. The nerves can pretty easily get to you, especially if you're not very experienced with Galaxy 2. And on top of that, there are difficult sections. I think the one with the flip switches can be very challenging if you don't have any clouds. Now, you can go into this area with at least 1 or 2 clouds. I tend to try to do that to make avoiding the lasers a little bit easier. But even after that, you know, once you get to that point and you're using Cloud Mario, I think something else that a lot of people don't really think about that makes the stage so difficult is people are so used to Mario's gravity with just regular Mario. But here you are being thrown into the hardest stage in the game as Cloud Mario, where his gravity is much floatier and it's different. And while technically Cloud Mario does make the jumps easier, if you're not used to it, which you probably aren't, it's pretty easy to throw you off. And I think just the fact that you have to control Mario in a slightly different way does make it a little bit more difficult. And then, of course, there's the final section with all the Hammer Bros and Boomerang Bros. If you're patient, it isn't that bad, but, like, at the same time, it is extremely nerve-wracking because it's the very last section, and if you aren't careful, it is very, very easy to get hit. And then, of course, you know, if you get hit, you're redoing the whole thing. But, yeah, I think this might end up being one of the hardest ones. I don't know if I would say it's the hardest one, but it's definitely up there, like in the top 2 to top 3 or something. Yeah, I think it definitely belongs to be there. Because, like, again, no checkpoints and then, like, 1 hit. That's pretty brutal. So, let's see what we have next. We've got Super Mario 3D Land, and this is Special 8 Crown. And it's a level that's honestly a little bit hidden. Especially if you're not really familiar with this game. You know, it's pretty easy to, like, just play through the game normally and play the special stages, but then, like, to actually get here, yeah, I think you have to, like, clear all the stages first, and then you have to, like, run back to all the way to the left in Special 8 just to find it, so it's a little bit hidden. But, yeah, I would say this is another level that is incredibly difficult because it is... We're getting into... Well, I guess Galaxy 2 technically counts as this too, but we're kind of into the multiple section territory, multiple level territory, where, like, yes, this is all one level, but they're all segmented together. And just because it's more... Just because, like, the length is longer, that inherently just makes it more likely for you to make mistakes. And not only is that the case, but this is another level where, while you can technically get hit, there are no checkpoints. So if you die at any point, if you fall off the stage, you're redoing the whole thing, and that really sucks. And what makes this so difficult is Mario 3D Land is not the smoothest controlling Mario game. You move in 8 directions, which, you know, is fine. It works for what it's worth, but for this stage... Like, there's so many narrow platforms. You gotta bounce off Toad at some point. You gotta bounce off, like, Goombas. You gotta do a lot of really, really precise jumps here. And while you can technically get hit, I think you can get hit, like 1 time. Maybe there's a mushroom or something somewhere. I don't know. I don't remember there being one. But even though you can technically get hit at least once, and you can also bring in, like, a Tanuki suit or something if you really want to for an extra hit point, just the fact that, like, there's a lot of hard sections and there's no checkpoints makes this an absolutely brutal level. And, you know, when you're kind of going through, there's so many sections I could bring up, like where all the bob-ombs are falling from the sky, you have all the fire bars, and the ground is falling from underneath. There's so much going on here. But I don't know if I would say it's the hardest stage. Or, yeah, probably not the hardest level, just because you do technically have hit points, and you can bring in a Tanuki, which does make it a little bit easier. But also just the sheer length makes this one pretty brutal. So I think for that, this is still going to be an S tier, but we're going to put it in a low S tier. And I think we're going to put it a little bit below Pachinko Machine, because at least the game controls better than Pachinko, because, like, the Pachinko just sucks ass when it comes to the controls. It's just so obnoxious. But let's see what's next. Now we have Champions Road from Mario 3D World. I think this is another one that a lot of people think about right away when they're thinking about really hard Mario stages. And yeah, it's kind of the same idea as Mario 3D Land. You're going through a bunch of segmented sections. There's no checkpoints. And while you can technically bring in power-ups like a Tanuki suit or a cat suit or something, they're only going to last for so long. Like, yeah, once you get hit, the game just gets way harder at that point. And, yeah, I would say that the segments are honestly way more difficult in this game. Because, like, you know, you've got a bunch of, like, really thin bars with charge and chucks. You have the blue and red flipping platforms, and they switch ridiculously quickly. And, of course, the very end with all the dash panels is just brutal, especially if you don't have any power-ups. Like, the dash panel section at the end with the Tanuki suit is a lot more manageable, just because you can float in the air and give yourself some recovery time. But without it, oh my god, it is so goddamn hard. It is just ridiculous. Now, with that said, I think I could still argue that this is slightly easier than 3D Land, just because the controls are a little bit better. They're a little bit smoother, and not only that, but there are quite a few sections you can kind of cheese through. And I think one of the most prominent sections that are easy to cheese is if you bring in a cat suit and you get to the horned ant trooper section where you're supposed to kind of like jump around them or wall jump around them, you can technically just like attack them all and get rid of them before wall jumping, which just makes that entire challenge easy. And then you got like the water section. That is, as long as you swim, like, you're fine. And I mean, it's interesting because, like, I would say half of these segments are insanely difficult, and then half of them are just like stupid easy. So it kind of has like a little bit of a mix of both. So yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead and keep this in S tier, but it's gonna be near the bottom just because the controls are a little bit better. And yeah, you do technically. You technically can get it a couple times, so we'll just leave that there. Let's move on to our next one, and that is World 97 from New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Now, this is, of course, one of the levels from World 9, and it's one of the... I think you have to, like, get all the star coins in World 7 or something to unlock it. And the World 9 levels are pretty difficult, but I would argue that this is the hardest one just because all the ground that you're on is ice, and underneath the ice is munchers, which you can't destroy. And if you get hit by them, then you lose. You obviously, you don't want to get hit. If you have like Fire Mario, or if you're just Big Mario and you shrink down to small, like trying to beat this level as small Mario sounds horrible. I can't imagine doing that. But yeah, I think this is a weird stage because, like, it is just one level. It's not going to be like an S tier difficulty, but I do think it's probably going to be around B or A tier, especially if you're going for the star coins, because beating the level is definitely manageable. Like, while, getting hit by the munchers and avoiding them and avoiding all the fire can be difficult, if you're just trying to, like, casually plow through it, it's fine. It's really not that bad. It's when you're going for the star coins, that's when it gets really hard, because you have to try to kind of, like, manipulate the fire itself to actually, like, break off certain pieces of ice so you can collect the star coin. And this is really, really hard to do, especially the third star coin, because you got Fire Bros, and you basically have to let them throw fire, destroy the path in front of you, but you can only let them do that for a little bit, because if they break too much ice, then it's impossible to get the star coin. So it's interesting just because, like, you have to be very meticulous with the Fire Bros and basically just all the enemies in the game. Like, you're gonna need them to get through a couple of sections or to get star coins or whatever, but you have to be careful how much you use them. So I think for that reason, just because of the complexity itself, I want to throw this. This is probably, I think it's probably still a B tier, just because, like, yeah, I would still say Tubular is still a little bit harder just because you're using Balloon Mario, who's just not as easy to control as just regular Mario in this game. So, yeah, I think probably a low B tier is fine. Let's go ahead and check out what is... this is the hardest Mario level. It's the Impossible Pack. I mean, I think we all saw this coming. This is just brutally unfair. It's just absurd. Like, it's genuinely absurd what the game wants you to do here. Now, of course, you can just beat these stages as, like, Gold Tanuki Mario, right? But, like, I mean, come on. We're talking about actually beating the levels. And that's the thing. This is another one where the level is segmented. You got 3 stages to beat. And while you could argue that something like Champions Road or S8 Crown is technically longer, this is way, way, way harder. Like, every single level, outside of maybe the first section of the first level, is just brutal. Like, within the first world, or within the first course, I should say, you got all these birds diving at you. You got to get across on this little, like, Ferris wheel things. There's bombs falling from pipes. You got Lecatus throwing spinies. And if you get through all that shit, you got Hammer Bros and Chain Chomps to avoid. And at this point, you might have Big Mario if you're lucky. You probably got Small Mario, right? So, yeah, it's just, like, avoiding all of that stuff and having the reflexes to avoid all the hammers and the bob-ombs. It's insane. Like, it's just so goddamn hard. And you're expected to beat all 3 of these courses on 1 life. And, like, yes, you do technically get a couple hit points here and there, but that doesn't really mean much when the stages are so hard. And then course 2 is probably the easiest of all 3. And it's not, again, that's not really saying much because, like, it's still really hard because it involves a lot of fire bars. You have a bunch of, like, spinning square platforms. You have to, like, wall jump around. There's fire amps to avoid. There's just all sorts of shenanigans, and it's really, really hard to get your way through course 2. And then course 3, you're in the castle. You got poison lava, or just poison, I guess, that rises over and over again. You know, just goes from top to bottom, and you have to bounce off music notes to get across the stage, and you have to, like, time it so you don't get hit by the poison, because, you know, the poison's going to be an insta-death, right? So you got to do all this while avoiding spikes. There's dry bones on conveyor belts you have to avoid. You got Fire Bros, and you have to use, like, springs to avoid the poison. There's just, like, there's so much happening in this stage. And you're expected to do all this on 1 life. Like, I'm sorry, it is just insane. It really is. So, yeah, I don't think anything's going to ever beat this. Like, I think the only way that you could make something harder than the Impossible Pack is to maybe make a really, really long Mario level that has no checkpoints and no hit points. So basically, like, imagine something like the Perfect Run or like Champions Road, but you either can't get hit at all, or no, you basically can't get hit and there's no checkpoints. Like, that's the only way that you can maybe make something harder than the Impossible Pack. And even then, I don't know. Like, the challenges and the jumps and the reflexes that you have to properly clear this stage it's actually just ridiculous. Okay, let's move on to New Super Mario Bros. U. And I was debating on even including this because technically it's not a stage, but it's a challenge for Mario Bros. U. And I thought it'd be interesting to at least include because why not, right? And this is one of the, I think it's one of the coin challenges, and it's called Don't Touch Anything. And the goal here is to simply get through the stage without touching any coins. Now, of course, you can get a bronze medal by touching up to 5 coins or a silver by touching up to 2 coins. But if you're going for a gold, you got to get through the entire stage while touching 0 coins. And good luck with that, because this level is just insane, because you've got a bunch of moving platforms. There are coins all over the place. So you're going to have to make a lot of really difficult high jumps. There's a tons of, like, spinies to avoid, and Lecatus are following you around, which makes, and that's what makes this so hard, is the fact that the spinies are completely unpredictable, and you can't, like, try to memorize or, like, muscle memorize the stage and, like, learn the movement. Like, obviously you can do that to an extent, but the spinies are random every single time. So you kind of just have to not only get really, really good at the stage to beat it, but you also just have to get a little bit lucky with the spinies. And while it's not necessarily it's not a long stage, it is really, really brutal. I think this probably belongs somewhere in high A tier. I would argue maybe even like the highest A tier. I think we'll put it there. Maybe I'll end up swapping it with Wario's Castle at some point, but I think this is fine. And the only reason I don't want to put it in S tier is because it is just one level, and the only reason I have a Pachinko Machine in S tier is because the controls suck, but everything else, all these other levels in the S tier category are multiple segments. This is just one level, and that's really the only reason I'm putting it in A tier, just because, like, while it is insanely hard to get the gold medal, it can be done with enough practice because, like, it is so short. It's definitely doable, but some of these without practice, like I said, you know, I don't really find any of these all that difficult at this point, but as a beginner player, you're going to struggle a lot more with, like, the Impossible Pack or the Perfect Run or any of these in S tier compared to Don't Touch Anything. So, now we've got a couple more to go through. We have Mario Odyssey's Darker Side. And this is actually one of those stages that could have ended up in the S tier. It really could have. It was I would say, it could have technically been one of the hardest levels in the game because it is multi-segmented. I think it's actually the longest level that we'll be talking about today. Like, I mean, it takes, like, what, 10 minutes probably just to beat Darker Side, and that's assuming that you don't do any skips because, of course, with the glide-on section, you can skip a bunch of this area, or you can skip, like, a couple of the segments or whatever, but I think just for the sheer length alone, this automatically makes this an A tier. But the question is where, and the reason I'm even thinking about where to put it is because the game is kind of generous with you with this one. And you'd think, like, okay, this doesn't sound generous. There's, like, 80 segments, and yes, there is a lot of game to play, but there's also a lot of hit points. Like, you start off with 3, which is usually more than you get for the vast majority of these levels that we've talked about. But on top of that, if you talk to the pyramid about halfway through the stage, you can get more hit points. You can get up to 6, which makes some of the hardest sections in the entire game way more manageable. I think just for the simple fact that you can very easily get more health, just more health in general, makes the stage significantly easier, which is honestly kind of a shame because there's a lot of really cool segments. Like, I love the one where you're playing as the fireball and you got to jump from like circle to circle while avoiding the spikes. I think that is a lot of fun. And then, you know, there's just, like, so many really interesting segments in the stage. But it's just kind of dumbed down because you can get the extra hit points, which is, you know, like I said, it's just a little bit unfortunate. So I don't know where I'm going to put this. This is definitely still an A tier just for its sheer length. But because of the hit points, I think I'm actually going to put it... I don't know if I want to put it below C3 or Lily Pad. I think we're going to put it... Oh, this is really hard. I don't know. I'm going to put it right here for now. I don't know if I like this spot. I might end up moving it later, but I think we're going to throw it in between Lily Pad Ride and World C3. But now let's move on to our final hardest Mario level, and that is, of course, the final test badge marathon from Super Mario Bros. Wonder. And once again, like with Super Mario Odyssey, this absolutely had the potential to be the most difficult Mario level of all time. But because it is a more modern Mario game, the developers are a lot more generous with us nowadays. And the only reason that this isn't the hardest one is simply because there's checkpoints. And that is really, really unfortunate because there are so many segments. They're all so well done because they all use the different badges, which I think is just a really cool way of making a final difficult level for a game like this. You know, using all of your badges. That was such a big thing in Mario Bros. Wonder. And so many of the segments are really challenging, like the swimming section. Well, the swimming section isn't that hard. It's more just nerve-wracking. I think the high jump section where you got to avoid the fire bars, that can be particularly difficult. Or when the lava's rising up, your wall jumps have to be extremely precise. You don't have much room for error. There's a lot of... and even, like, the very end, of course, when you're completely invisible. Like, that sucks. The fact that they put that at the very end is like, oh, why would you do that? Oh, my God. And that's great. You know, this, like I said, this absolutely has the potential to be the hardest Mario level. But because there's checkpoints, you know, when you die, you get to a certain point. As long as you make a decent amount of progress, you're probably going to hit a checkpoint, right? Just for that reason, I think that it really tones down the difficulty quite a bit. How much, though? That's the question. Because, like, the segments are still really hard. And I think just because they are still pretty brutal, this still belongs in A tier. The question is just where. And I think if I had to argue, maybe this goes at the very top of the A tier. Yeah, you know what? Maybe this ends up going, like, right here. I think I would be okay with this. So let's go through. We have the Impossible Pack as the hardest, then the Perfect Run, Pachinko Machine, S8 Crown, Champions Road. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this S tier. The A tier, I don't know. We've got Final Test Badge Marathon at the very top. Don't touch anything. Wario's Castle. The Lily Ride, Darker Side, World C3. Okay. I think I'm probably okay with these two. I'm really trying to analyze these to see if there's like anything that I'd want to move around. The only one I'm a little bit conflicted with is Darker Side and where to put that, because maybe, okay, here's what I'm actually going to do. I'm going to move Darker Side above the Lily Pad. Just because, like, the Lily Pad is extremely difficult, but again, it's just like one level. I think I'm just going to leave it like that. I think that's fine. And then B tier, we have 9-7. We got Tubular, the 9-7. And then the easiest, Rainbow Ride. Okay. I think this works pretty well, actually. So, yeah. There you have it. There is every single ridiculously hard Mario level. I might end up doing this for a bunch of different games. I'm thinking about maybe we do hardest level for, like, all the Kirby games. Maybe, like, all the Sonic games. Or something with Zelda. Actually, like, hardest to easiest Zelda dungeons could be a really fun one. Maybe we'll do something like that. But, yeah, I think that's going to be about it. Guys, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all soon.